Howdy folks, hope you're all enjoying your weekend, and welcome to the public test server with the mighty Jingles, where today we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming Halloween special event. Yep, that's right, Submarines. And we're also going to be taking a look at some of the new upcoming premiums, which for the moment are port teasers only. They're all strictly work in progress. I'm not allowed to actually take them out and play them and show you what they're like in battle. We're going to begin with the brand new premium Tier 3 American cruiser, the USS Charleston, and this is it. I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure why they decided to put the USS Charleston in. She was constructed prior to World War One, served in World War One, convoy escort duties across the Atlantic and in the Caribbean mostly, and that was pretty much it. Nothing remarkable about this ship's service career. She's effectively almost exactly the same as the St. Louis, the existing American Tier 3 cruiser. She is in fact also a St. Louis class armoured cruiser. There are some very minor differences, and they're honestly far too small to go into detail about. To all intents and purposes, the USS Charleston is basically a premium version of the USS St. Louis. And that's not a bad thing, because the USS St. Louis is a very good Tier 3 American cruiser. So I suppose another one is not bad. And that's pretty much all we're going to say about the Charleston. We're moving on from the Charleston to one that is going to ruffle a few tail feathers. The USS West Virginia. And she is a mighty pretty looking ship. I do have to take my hat off to Wargaming's artists. That's a very nice premium camouflage skin. However, a lot of people are not happy, if you believe what you read on the forums, about this Tier 6 version of the West Virginia. This is the version of the West Virginia that was sunk at Pearl Harbor. It's the pre-World War II version. It is not the 1944 refit version of the West Virginia. The West Virginia was sunk at Pearl Harbor. She was refloated and salvaged in 1942, went into refit, and came out fighting fit in 1944. If this had been the 1944 version of the West Virginia, it would probably have had to be a Tier 8. And that's the version that most people seem to want. The differences would have been, well, substantially better anti-aircraft firepower. Even for Tier 6, that's a pretty poor AA defense rating. She would also probably have had more accurate guns, thanks to the improved fire control systems. But nothing is ever going to be able to be done about this. Maximum speed of 21 knots. See, that was the problem that affected the real-life West Virginia and other Pearl Harbor veterans. These old pre-World War II battle wagons, you could refit them, you could upgrade their anti-aircraft defences, you could fit all kinds of modern fancy fire control radars to make the guns more accurate, and they certainly did. And they certainly worked under the command of Rear Admiral Jesse Oldendorf at the Battle of Surigao Strait, which was a night action conducted almost exclusively by using radar-directed firepower, where this battleship and others like her completely annihilated a large Japanese task force, including several battleships, at the Battle of the Surigao Strait. But that was the only notable action that these old Pearl Harbor battle wagons actually saw during World War II, even though several of them were available for service prior to that. And the reason was because of this terrible slow speed of 21 knots and the fact that they guzzled fuel like nobody's business. Several of these ships were actually available for service as early as the invasion of Guadalcanal, but they weren't used because at that stage of the Pacific War, America only had around about, I think the precise number was 4 oil tankers available to keep all of their Pacific fleet fueled and at sea, and that just wasn't enough. So they had to choose between keeping the battleships at sea or keeping the aircraft carriers at sea, and wisely they chose the aircraft carriers. It wasn't until significantly later in the war, when American shipbuilding had caught up with demand, that they were able to supply enough fuel tankers to keep massive invasion fleets, complete with old battle wagons like this, at sea permanently. So, and apart from anything else, who would want to play a Tier 8 battleship that could only do 21 knots, regardless of how good the guns were? Yeah. So be careful what you wish for. because you might get it. Remember, this is a work in progress. They may yet, although I don't think it's very likely, they may yet bow to public demand and remodel this ship. Actually, no, that's never going to happen. You can't just completely remodel a 3D ship replica like this overnight and get it out in time for the next patch. I think we're probably pretty resigned to seeing this ship in its Tier 6 state. Although I personally think that it would be a better Tier 6 than it would be a Tier 8. 21 knots at Tier 6 is not fun, but it's certainly workable. 21 knots at Tier 8? No thank you. So, the USS West Virginia. Tier 6, for the moment, and probably permanently, American battleship. This, of course, brings us on to the USS Wichita. Now, the Wichita was I can see why they wanted to put the Wichita in, because it looks like a Baltimore, but it's not. It was originally supposed to be in New Orleans, but halfway through construction they started getting funny ideas. Most notably, things like this. If I can find the right turret, yeah, there. And also here. If you have a look at, well, in fact I can show you the Baltimore. Let's have a look at the secondaries on the Baltimore. Those double-barreled turrets. The Wichita doesn't have any of those. These are all single-barreled secondary mounts. So it's kind of unusual. The Wichita was really a class all of its own. It wasn't a New Orleans and it wasn't really a Baltimore. It was just a Wichita. So I can kind of see why Wargaming might decide to put a fairly unique ship like this into the game. So, you know, that's it for history, at least. What about, you know, what's it actually like? Well, the similarities with the Baltimore are many. The Wichita is also, like the Baltimore, a 9-gun, 203mm heavy cruiser. However, the Baltimore is superior in most respects. Let's just take a quick look. The Wichita has 37,900 hit points. The Baltimore, 42,400. Yeah, substantially better. They both have absolutely lousy torpedo protection, 4% on the Baltimore and 4% on the Wichita. And they have armour of up to 203mm, although I cannot for the life of me find where the 203mm armour is. Actually, is it here? There we go. I finally found it. The main battery mount armour. The turret face on the main batteries is 203mm. Everything else, at the most, is 152. So there we go. Mystery solved. I can't begin to tell you how long it took me to find that. So, yeah. Armour, reasonable. But when we come to the guns, this is where we start to see some fairly substantial differences. They are both 203mm gun-armed ships. But the reload time on the Wichita is 15 seconds, with a 30-second 180-degree turret traverse. The reload on the Baltimore is 10 seconds. That means the Baltimore has 50% better damage per minute, with the same 30-second 180-degree turret traverse. That's a 50% better damage per minute. That's a lot. Let's not forget, cruisers are all about the DPM. And the Wichita already can't even begin to compare to the Baltimore. Baltimore's guns have a 15.8 kilometer range. The Wichita's also have a 15.8 kilometer range. The Wichita's air defense of 55 isn't even as good as the Baltimore's. And by the way, in case you're wondering, the Baltimore here is no. Wait, what are we looking at? There we go. Upgrades. The only upgrade I fitted to the Baltimore is concealment system. The same with the Wichita, right? Purely for evaluating the differences in concealment. I haven't bothered fitting any. For example, where is it? Here we go, in the third slot. Yeah, no AA gun mods, nothing like that. And if you look at the Wichita's captain, he has absolutely zero AA boosting skills chosen. This is just a fairly typical cruiser concealment build. And I think I've done exactly the same on the Baltimore. Yeah, just so we have a fair comparison. Captains have exactly the same skills. Both ships have exactly the same modules and upgrades fitted. So, yeah. 50% less damage per minute. Worse anti-aircraft defense, although you can always slap a band-aid on that in the form of, there we go, the defensive AA fire. Maneuverability, speed of 33.6 knots, the Baltimore 32.5 knots. So the Wichita is marginally faster. A reasonably good turning circle radius is 730 meters on the Baltimore. We go to the Wichita, and it's actually much, much better. So it's a slightly faster and more maneuverable ship with a 9.8 second rudder shift time, which is fairly nice. Although the Baltimore's rudder shift is better. So, yeah. The only real advantage that the Wichita has over the Baltimore is down here in concealment. That's an 8.7 kilometer surface detection range. That is phenomenally good for a cruiser. The Baltimore, by comparison, isn't bad with 10 kilometers, but 8.7 kilometers. And this is the single outstanding feature of the Wichita. It has lousy DPM, it has lousy anti-aircraft defenses, but its concealment and the fact that it has a radar with a range of 9 kilometers means this ship can actually stealth radar. Its surface detection range is 8.7 kilometers and its radar has a range of 9. So there's that. There are no other fancy gimmicks associated with the consumables, for example. You have to choose between radar or catapult fighter, defensive AA and hydroacoustic search. And that, in a nutshell, is the Wichita. She's a good looking ship, but her DPM's bad. Her AA is not good, but she is incredibly sneaky, and has a slight maneuverability and agility edge over her closest comparison, the USS Baltimore. And that brings us on to the Brits. At Tier 3, we have the battleship that started it all, HMS Dreadnought. Technically, we already kind of have a Dreadnought in the game. HMS Bellerophon, the existing British Tier 3 battleship, is a Dreadnought class battleship, but it's not the Dreadnought, and this is. Prior to the development of this ship, battleships, because battleships existed prior to the introduction of HMS Dreadnought, but battleships prior to the introduction of this ship had all kinds of guns. They had large calibers in various, large caliber batteries in various different calibers. There was no uniformity, which was a nightmare for resupply. When you had to resupply 15 different calibers of ammunition to a battleship, and most of those guns probably wouldn't be used. The Dreadnought had a uniform main battery gun armament, with some secondary guns for close range work, and she was also powered by a steam turbine engine, which meant at the time she was one of the fastest battleships. Well, in fact, she was the fastest battleship afloat with the most powerful gun armament, and she effectively rendered every other battleship in the world obsolete the second she was commissioned, and indirectly, or perhaps very directly, led to a naval arms race, but that's another story. There's nothing hugely special about the Dreadnought's stats. 37,400 health, 10 of these 305mm rifles, plenty of secondaries, 17 76.2mm guns, absolutely zero, not just bad anti-aircraft defense, no anti-aircraft defense, none whatsoever. Speed, I said she was the fastest battleship afloat. I didn't say she was a fast battleship. Speed of 19 knots, but Tier 3, who cares? And concealment is not bad, actually, 10 kilometers. Like I said, the stats of the ship, nothing special. She's certainly not bad. She actually appears to be rather good. But most people are going to be buying this ship, not because of the stats, but simply because of what she is. She's HMS Dreadnought. So, from the first modern battleship ever built to the last battleship ever built, and the last battleship built by the Royal Navy. At Tier 8, a very, very pretty ship, HMS Vanguard. Unfortunately, in her current form, she kind of sucks. Now, I realise this is a work in progress, all stats are subject to change, but damn, I really hope they do, because I at the moment, there is no way I would buy the Vanguard. She is terrible. I'll explain why. She does have a lot of hit points, we have to give her that much. 71,700 if we have a look at, for example, the North Carolina, an excellent Tier 8 battleship. She only has 66,000. So, The Vanguard does have a healthy chunk of hit points. Unfortunately, in a ship as bad as this, that basically just means you're an experienced pinata for the enemy team, as they hit you over and over and over for huge amounts of damage. And they're going to do that largely because of this. That Citadel armour belt is 356mm thick. But, Tier 8 battleship, 4-end plate and a 32mm, okay, it'll bow on a 16-inch shell, but obviously not the Yamato's 18-inch. 32mm of 4-end deck plating, 32mm of midships deck plating, and it's 32mm everywhere. So it's going to eat plunging fire from 16-inch shells like nobody's business. It's going to take a lot of damage. But that's not the worst thing. If we remove the external plating and just have a look at the Citadel, yep, this 305mm, 356mm, 343mm, it's all above the waterline. That's all above the waterline. And let's not forget the deck armour. If I can remember to put it on. Where is it? There we go. It's only 32mm. So, large caliber shells, 5 from range, are going to come plunging straight down, straight through that, straight into the Citadel. Large caliber shells, and when I say large caliber, I mean, hell, at sufficiently close ranges, American 203mm armour piercing is included in that category, is going to black right through the armour belt and go straight into the Citadel. This ship is going to eat Citadels. Its diet will consist exclusively of Citadels. It's just going to get slaughtered. In my humble opinion. At the moment. Work in progress, all stats subject to change, and I fervently hope they do. So that's bad. Right, this ship is just going to be a huge damage sponge. What about the guns? This is where it gets even worse. She's a Tier 8 battleship, armed only with 8 15-inch guns, 381mm. Okay, but, well, there are other Tier 8 battleships that only have 8 15-inch guns, and they seem to do quite well. Oh, hello there, Bismarck. I was wondering when you were going to appear. Well, yeah, this is true. But the Bismarck, unlike the Vanguard, if it'll give me control of the camera back, has 50mm of deck plating, so is nowhere near as vulnerable to plunging Citadel hits. In fact, I can count on the fingers of one head the number of times I've seen the Bismarck get Citadeled at all. Another thing about these guns, if we look at the Bismarck's 15-inch guns, they have a 26-second reload and a 180-degree turret traverse of 36 seconds. This is without any modifications. The captain only has one skill point. Let's take a closer look at the captain. There's no expert marksman skill there, so nothing on the captain that's going to affect how the turrets traverse. And if we have a look at the upgrades fitted to the ship, nothing there to affect how quickly the turrets traverse. Okay, that's a base 26-second reload, and again with no modifications to improve the reload of the guns, 26-second reload and a 36-second turret traverse. We go to the Vanguard, same caliber guns, same number of guns, about as accurate as the Bismarck, i.e. not at all. The Vanguard has a terrible Sigma rating, and it takes 30 seconds to reload them and 72 seconds to turn them from one side to the other. You could be shooting at a target on the port side, decide you need to engage a target on the starboard side, go away and make a cup of coffee, and the coffee would be done before the guns had turned around. I was struggling to think of exactly what upgrade to fit into this slot, because the Sigma rating of the guns is bad, so you kind of want the aiming system modification, but 72-second turret traverse. Tell you what we're going to do, because I've deliberately put a captain with no skill points spent on this ship, just to illustrate how monstrously bad this turret traverse is. We're going to fit main battery modification 2. There we go, and that's reduced the turret traverse by 15%, although it has increased the reload by 5%, and we're going to put the Vanguard's actual captain on. because he does have the expert marksman skill. So there we go, with expert marksman and with main battery modification too. That 30-second reload is now worse. It's now 31.5 seconds. But with every available skill and module to boost the turret traverse, it's still it's still nearly twice as long as the Bismarck. 50.3 seconds. Holy shit, it's bad. So yeah, there's that. Let's have a quick look at the fire chance. Yep, 34% chance of fire on target, so pretty much like the Monarch at tier 8. Decent armor piercing, not incredibly good high explosive. Let me just take a quick look at the ammo and consumables. Let's have a look at this heal. That is a fairly good repair party. 358 health per second. It's nowhere near as good as... I don't have it. I would have to unlock it. It's not bad. It's alright. It's a decent heal. If you look at the North Carolina, for example, North Carolina's 330. It's not the overpowered, oh my god, I need to reprint a new ship heal that you get on the Nelson, that you get on the Lion, that you get on the Conqueror. But it is better than average. But I don't think it's going to be enough with a Citadel as exposed as that. It's just... AA defense, however, is exceptionally good. 75 is a... And again, this is without any skills that buff anti-aircraft, like basic firing training, advanced firing training, and so on and so on. It's without any modules that affect anti-aircraft defense. A base AA rating of 75 at tier 8, very good. If you look at the North Carolina, which is also a fairly fearsome AA ship, 77. So comparable to the North Carolina. And of course, you can boost that higher, but why would you? Because you pretty much need all of these, and you pretty much need the skills that this guy has. Yeah. Speed, maneuverability, not bad. 30 knots, 850 meter turning circle, and the 13-second rudder shift time, although it should be noted that the 13-second rudder shift is with the steering gear mod 2, which reduces the rudder shift by 20 seconds. The base rudder shift is actually not that good, 16.2 seconds. Where this ship does shine, however, is in its concealment. Now this of course is a concealment expert build, Captain has that skill, and I have fitted the concealment system modification 1, which gets the surface detection range down to 11.1 kilometers, which is pretty nice. But is that enough to sell this ship? The fact that, I mean, if you want a ship that's reasonably quick and stealthy, pick a destroyer. Hell, pick the USS Wichita, gets 8.7 kilometers and is faster. This is a battleship. It's supposed to be for dishing out and taking damage. Well, it can't dish the damage out because the guns fire slowly, turn even slower, and it's horribly inaccurate. And it can't take the damage because its Citadel sits about 30 feet out of the water and is absolutely huge, and its deck is only 32 millimeters. So I sincerely hope this ship receives some love prior, because let's remember this is a work in progress, all stats subject to change, but holy shit, I hope the stats of this ship change before it sees the light of day, because I wouldn't be buying it in this form. Even if they do have a very nice little ship's crest mounted there over the bridge. Sorry, that's not enough, and neither is the concealment. So that is the Vanguard. Anyway, those are the premiums which are currently available for preview only on the test server. Let's take a look at them submarines. Also, currently on the test server and coming soon to a live server is the brand new Halloween special event featuring for the first time ever submarine gameplay. The horror of the deep blue sea is the brand new operation, and here it is. Let's take a look at the details. So this is submarines only. Now, when the event goes live, upon first login, you will find one of these sitting in your harbour. It's the Barracuda. It's a tier 7 submarine. Don't worry too much about the stats. Don't worry about the tier of the submarine. None of that really matters. And we'll be going over the stats, and you'll see the submarine gameplay in a moment. Here's what you have to know about this operation, because on the test server at least it's not incredibly clear about Well, how do you unlock additional submarines? I've no doubt that when it does actually go live, there'll be a news bulletin available in-game, there'll be a portal article, which will explain it all, but even then, not everybody reads those. So, here's how you unlock additional submarines. There are apparently 5. One of them, I think it's called the Killer Whale. I don't know how to unlock. Hopefully, somebody will be able to let us know in the comments section of this video, but here's how you go about unlocking the others. You see, it's not just Horror of the Deep Blue Sea. You've got all of the previous Halloween operations are available as well. And they're not just including them for nostalgia purposes. For example, if you play the original Saving Transylvania operation and complete it with 5 stars, you will unlock the Zipper submarine. Now this is a very, very small and hyper-maneuverable little submarine that can fire 1 torpedo straight ahead and 1 torpedo to the rear. I haven't actually done that here on the test server yet, but that's what you get for 5-starring Saving Transylvania. Sunray in the Darkness. If you manage to 5-star this, you'll unlock another submarine called the Gyrofalcon, which is just incredible fun, although I haven't done it myself. More on that in a moment. Wait until you see the game that I played. Trying to 5-star this thing with a team of random nobodies. Meanwhile, the actual submarine operation itself, Horror of the Deep Blue Sea, if you complete that with 5 stars, you unlock this one, the Sea Lion. Again, don't worry too much about the various different stats of the submarines. We'll be showing you the differences in the gameplay, which will be coming up in a moment. The new operation is a lot of fun. The submarines are fantastic. And you know what? I'm going to stop talking about them. We're going to just show you. Okay? You ready? Well, actually, first, let's just have a comedy moment when I show you what I had to go through in order to try to unlock the Gyrofalcon submarine, which is hilarious. It has an underwater speed of 31 knots. Yes, I know, that's not even remotely realistic. These are steampunk fantasy submarines. Just go with it. So here, on the test server, is my attempt with a random team to unlock the Gyrofalcon submarine. You ready? Here we go. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you watch the whole thing. This is last year's Halloween special event, Operation Sunray, Light in the Darkness, which I thought was a fantastic game mode. But again, I'm not going to bore you with the details. You're going to be watching a very, very short, edited highlight. The reason I wanted to get this operation done with 5 stars was because doing this operation with 5 stars unlocks the Gyrofalcon. And having the Gyrofalcon makes things substantially easier if you're actually going to do the submarine operation on hard difficulty and complete that with 5 stars, which we'll see very, very shortly. So, to summarise, a couple of things that you need to achieve in order to complete this operation with 5 stars and unlock that Gyrofalcon. First, you have to sink the Rasputin. You have to protect the Transylvania, which we can see emerging from the portal over there, pursued by a whole bunch of ships. There are a whole bunch of different objectives, which, as you'd expect, you have to complete in order to 5-star this operation, and they'll be popping up on screen as and when they become available. But the one that continually seems to trip teams up is sinking the enemy aircraft carrier, the Great Gorgon, which doesn't actually appear in the battle until later on. What tends to happen in every previous attempt at this operation that I played was the cruisers suck. The cruisers are by far your biggest source of damage in this operation. And they all tend to just... You see the green circle up ahead? That's called the filth. It expands for as long as that portal is active. You've got 3 towers, you can see the laser beams from the towers hitting the portal. Within a set period of time, they're going to shut that portal down, and the filth will contract. Enemy ships in the filth heal. When you are in the filth, you take damage, and also your view range is considerably reduced. So, on previous attempts at this operation, what seemed to happen over and over again was that the cruisers would all charge into the filth so that they could torpedo the enemy battleships, and inevitably get themselves slaughtered in the process, leaving the team dangerously low on damage output, and making it next to impossible to complete the mission with 3 stars, let alone 5. So I thought, well, if you want a job done properly, do it yourself. Jumped into a cruiser, and this is what happened. Jumping forward slightly, the cruiser has 3 consumables. It has radar, which actually lasts 40 seconds and is very good. It has damage control, but the key to the cruiser's success is the gun reload booster. And it doesn't just reload your guns faster, it also heals you for 25% of the damage that you deal. And this is the key to success in a cruiser, particularly when the filth expands and you start taking damage from it. I've just triggered the booster, and just watch this rate of fire. It basically makes you... Well, it doesn't make you invulnerable to damage. If you take enough damage and won't go to sink you, you're going to sink. But provided you've got something to shoot at, you can just keep pumping the shells out, and basically negating any damage that you take. And the effectiveness of the consumable doubles when you reach 50,000 damage done, 100,000 damage done, and I think 200,000 damage done. So, yeah, a very, very nice consumable. And the key in this operation to taking down all of those enemy ships, in particular the Rasputin and the enemy carrier, the Great Gorgon, both of which must be sunk to complete this operation with 5 stars and unlock the Gyrofalcon submarine for the Submarine Halloween operation, which does make completing that operation with 5 stars, particularly on hard difficulty, significantly easier, which we'll see in the next battle. For now, however, now that we're familiar with exactly how the cruiser consumables work, we're going to skip ahead to when things start getting ridiculous. I'm coming under air attack, which tells me straight away that the Great Gorgon aircraft carrier has spawned, and sinking that thing is a condition for 5-starring this operation, so I'm going after it. I know it's out here somewhere, which means I have to chase it into the filth, so I will be taking continuous damage while I'm in the filth, although at the moment I'm healing, because I'm actually inside the healing radius of one of our battleships, but there's the carrier. Yeah, I know it's called a Shikaku here, this is a replay bug. While playing it was actually called the Great Gorgon. And you will note that it has 250,000 health, and I'm the only one going after it. Matters would have been significantly easier if our aircraft carrier player hadn't sucked and gotten himself sunk, but don't worry, plenty more of the team are going to be joining him soon. Reload booster up, and well, that is a scary amount of DPM. I've now done 330,000 damage. Another successful tactic for disposing of this carrier, because battleships in this operation have a consumable that makes them completely immune to damage for a short period of time. So if you take one of the battleships and you go after the aircraft carrier, equipped with a ramming flag, and trigger the consumable just before you ram it, that will do a stupid amount of damage to this thing. But we don't actually have a spare battleship at the moment. We've lost one of the towers. Another one of the towers is on 50% health. There's only me and one battleship left alive, and I'm probably not going to be expecting any help from him. He has his own problems. Which means it's just me and the Great Gorgon here. And I've already done 500,000 damage in total. How much damage do you think I'm going to have to do to this thing alone? Because remember, when it's in the filth, it heals. How much damage do you think I'm going to have to do all on my Jack Jones in order to sink this thing? Place your bets. I'll give you a couple of seconds. And then we'll skip to the end. You ready? Here we go. Now, before we cut to this point, I was at 599,000 damage done. I'm now at 1.37 million. And all of the damage that I've done has been to this aircraft carrier. And I still haven't been able to sink it. Remember, it only had 250,000 health to begin with. But because it heals while it's in the filth, you just can't take it out alone. It is very much a team effort. You need, in particular, having an aircraft carrier that knows what they're doing does make this operation fairly easy mode. Because aircraft carriers can stun targets. All kinds of useful things like that. Of course, you know how hard it is to find an aircraft carrier player who knows what they're doing. In fact, judging by this result, it also seems to be rather difficult to find destroyer and battleship captains that know what they're doing. But yeah, it looks like I'll be unlocking the Gyrofalcon some other time. That was over 900,000 damage done to the aircraft carrier, and 1.2 million damage done in total. Some teams just cannot be carried. So I ended up having to do this in the Sea Lion, and this is the new submarine operation, coming in the Halloween special event in the next patch for World of Warships. Now, I had already unlocked the Sea Lion by 5-starring normal mode difficulty. I joined Chrysanthos and Mr. Conway on the official World of Warships global Twitch channel, and had a couple of attempts at it, and eventually managed to 5-star it on normal difficulty with the default submarine, the Barracuda. Not too difficult. 5-starring it on hard difficulty, however, slightly more tricky. So this actually took part on Flamu's live stream, And we do have a couple of players who've managed to unlock the Gyrofalcon. Now, the Gyrofalcon is key here, particularly when it comes to one of the objectives, which is to scout out the enemy fortress. You see, the thing is, the enemy fortress, until you sink the Rasputin, is actually underwater, and therefore can only be scouted by a submerged submarine. And the Gyrofalcon can do 31 knots underwater. Yes, I know, these are fantasy steampunk submarines. Don't worry about it. Let's just talk about this submarine, however, the Sea Lion. It's got a top speed of 23 knots, both on the surface and submerged. Yes, I know, stop worrying about it. It can stay submerged for up to 1 minute and 40 seconds, providing it has a full oxygen tank, and you can only recharge the oxygen tank when you're on the surface. On the surface, it has a detection range of only 5 kilometers, while at periscope depth, it can only be detected from 2.5 kilometers away. You'll note that your torpedoes are much more accurate while you're at periscope depth. You can still fire the torpedoes when you're on the surface, but they're much less accurate. I also have 2 different types of torpedoes. I've actually got 3 forward torpedo tubes, which are constantly being reloaded, a bit like Italian autoloader tanks in World of Tanks. My 2 different types of torpedoes are freezing torpedoes, which is the one that I first hit that Mikasa with, which basically does some damage, can also cause flooding, and disables the ship's engines. My other 2 torpedo tubes are loaded with regular damaging torpedoes. Now, these are significantly slower. They only travel at 56 knots. They have a range of 8 kilometers. The freezing torpedoes have a speed of 76 knots and have a range of 8 kilometers. Another thing to note about this operation, or more specifically the spotting mechanics in this operation, my detection range, 5 kilometers on the surface right now. When at periscope depth, 2.5 kilometers, I can only actually be spotted by surface ships. All of these catapults and ballista, they can't actually spot you. They're effectively blind. Don't ask, that's just the way it is. So you only have to worry about being spotted by surface ships. And in the Sea Lion, all of your torpedoes have an 8 kilometer range, while on the surface you can only be spotted from 5 kilometers, although you're going to want to conduct an attack at periscope depth, which does start eating into your oxygen reserves. But in this submarine, providing you have a full tank, you can stay submerged or at periscope depth for up to 1 minute and 40 seconds. And you're obviously going to want to be conducting your attacks at periscope depth, because, well, you can see on the surface how wide the spread is for my torpedoes. And remember, these are only single launch torpedoes, so that one torpedo could go, well, pretty much anywhere. At periscope depth, they're laser accurate. You still have to take into account any maneuvers pulled by the enemy ship. But at periscope depth, they're only going to spot you from 2.1 kilometers, so you can afford to get, sorry, not 2.1, 2.5 kilometers. I think it's 2.1 kilometers at periscope depth in the Zipper submarine, which I think Flamu was actually playing in this operation. But in the Sea Lion, 2.5, which allows you to get in closer. I've just launched the freezing torpedo there, attempting to take out the engines and disable that enemy cruiser. And I'm now going to follow that up with the regular damage-dealing torpedoes. And I may have to submerge or risk being spotted. Or I could just turn away. Yeah, we got it. Okay. Now, mission objectives. So, we've already talked about scouting out the Black Lair. Now, that's indicated by this icon on the map. However, it's not just a simple case of getting within range and spotting it, because it's a submerged lair. Until you sink the Rasputin, the enemy battleship, that thing's underwater, so it can only be spotted by a submerged submarine. And there's a fairly tight time limit. That's why having a Gyrofalcon, which has a 31 knot underwater movement speed, makes this mission on hard difficulty a lot easier. And to get the Gyrofalcon, you're going to have to 5-star Operation Sunray. Good luck with that. Without the Gyrofalcon, difficult but not impossible. And we do have a player going by the name of Neytiri, who is in a Gyrofalcon, and his mission, should he choose to accept it, is to scout out the Black Lair while submerged. And he's pretty much, as soon as he gets the chance, going to head straight towards it on the surface to ensure he has a full oxygen tank. And then the second he gets spotted, he's just going to dive, fully submerge, and head straight towards it and get that thing spotted. Once it's spotted, it's going to stop healing the Rasputin. You see, there are two ways of spotting the black lair. You can either do what we've just described, or you can sink the Rasputin. Once the Rasputin sinks, the black lair pops up, and you get the credit for doing it, but it's incredibly difficult to sink the Rasputin while the black lair has been unspotted, because it keeps healing him. Oh, here we are underwater. You control your depth, by the way, with the Q and the E keys. Q to dive, and E to, well, not surface, but adjust your depth upwards. If your oxygen meter runs out, and mine is about to, and I have been detected, yikes, so close to that cruiser that he has actually spotted me, but he doesn't have depth charges, so he can't actually do anything about it. I'm just waiting for him to sink. And I'm about to emergency blow. This is what happens when you're submerged and you run out of oxygen. You don't actually take any damage, but your submarine is forced to make an emergency ascent. But this is fine. There's the emergency blow. It takes me back up to the surface where I wanted to be anyway, because I'm no longer in range of anything that can spot me. And I can start recharging my oxygen tanks. Now let's talk about some of those other objectives. Oh, there's the Rasputin over there. It's actually listed in a replay as an Imperator Nikolai I. And there's Neytiri and his Gyrofalcon, completely ignoring it, although he may be sending some torpedoes in its direction, but his mission is to scout out that black lair, force it to the surface, and prevent it from continuing to heal the Rasputin. We also have to sink 20 enemy ships, but we're well on the way to doing that. But one of the other things that's likely to trip up teams in attempting to 5-star this operation, even on normal difficulty, is spotting all of those catapults and ballista. There are 17 of them in total which must be spotted to earn a star, and some of them are right at the back of the black lair itself, and that's why I'm coming around this way. I'm pretty much all on my own over here. I don't have to worry about being spotted by the catapult. Only surface ships can actually detect submarines. That's probably not going to be true when they do eventually put submarines into the game itself. But for this steampunk Halloween operation, that's the way it works. In other news, Neytiri has done it. He's gotten close enough to the black lair to spot it while submerged, which means it's now been forced to the surface, and it's no longer healing the Rasputin. So the rest of the team, while I'm still on my mission to scout out that last remaining catapult or ballista, but the rest of the team are now starting to get stuck in on the Rasputin and his escorts, some of which are destroyers. And destroyers are very, very dangerous. They have sonar, so they can detect you from further away, even when you're fully submerged, and they have depth charges. Now, at the moment, in this operation, depth charges are simply dumped over the side and will explode at a random depth. I dare say that's probably something that is likely to change very far in the future when submarines do make it in, and they start to address the issue of anti-submarine warfare. But for now, this is pretty much it. That final tower, catapult, ballista, whatever it is, oh, I've been spotted. This isn't good. But it's over in that direction, so I'm going to fully submerge, although I am still detected. Wait, no, not anymore. We're good. Plenty of oxygen. Scored a couple of torpedo hits.
Concentrate fire on the enemy warship.
And once I'm at a nice safe distance, because I do want to have a full oxygen supply for conducting the attack on the Rasputin itself. So we're going to get ourselves on the surface. Crap, I'm spotted, I'm taking fire from the catapults. What are you going to do? Back down to periscope depth, no longer detected. And I need to spot that final tower. There's only one left. It's going to be up there somewhere. Pay attention to where I am on the map, by the way. There it is, spotted it. That's it. So with that done, that is pretty much all of the objectives other, and this is hard mode by the way, all of the objectives other than sinking the Rasputin. So now it's open season on that Russian battleship. Oh, there is one other objective that must be complete at the point where the operation concludes, when you sink the Rasputin basically. At least 3 team members must remain alive. But we have a fairly large margin of error where that's concerned. We've only lost 1 team member at this point. Right, I don't really want to get... You see, this is the trick. I don't have much in the way of an oxygen reserve here. and I keep getting spotted every time I surface. Now you can see how accurate your torpedoes are when you're at periscope depth, but I'm going to be forced to surface. And then I can't really guarantee hitting anything with the torpedoes because the torpedo spread is so wide. So you can see how tricky it can be to get yourself into a good attack position. You pretty much have to make your approach on the surface to guarantee that you have enough oxygen to conduct a successful attack, but you're vulnerable while you're on the surface. Anybody can shoot you, and you can be spotted from much further away. So that's the trick. It's pretty much just the towers shooting at me. Now, your submarine does have a secondary gun. Most of them do, not all of them. But we're usually talking like an 88 or a 76mm gun or a 102mm gun. You're not going to be sinking any surface targets or shore defences with that thing. Unfortunately, most of my torpedoes appear to have been eaten by the wreck of that cruiser that I sunk. Although I did land a couple on the Rasputin prior to the sinking of the cruiser. But now I've cleared the wreck of the cruiser, I can actually start to do some damage. Although I am so close, even at periscope depth, that I am spotted. And those catapults, they actually launch depth charges at you, by the way, and they can set you on fire. And you will continue to burn even if you're submerged, because the fires are internal. So people were thinking, well, surely you can put a fire out just by submerging the submarine. Yeah, not if the fire's inside the submarine. If the water gets in, it will put the fire out, but that's also, bad on its own. You don't want the water getting into the submarine. That's what we call sinking. Very, very different from submerging. Submerging is something you do on purpose. Sinking is not. One of those depth charges actually knocked my steering out, but I've got the last stand skill, and I don't really need to turn the submarine from side to side. I'm pointing straight at the Rasputin anyway. There's the emergency blow, ran out of oxygen. I've still got plenty of health. We can do this.
Torpedoes to starboard.
There's still 4 of us left alive. We only have to complete it with 3. I'm going to pop down at periscope depth just to get the torpedoes away. Oops, fat fingers, press the wrong button. Let's get back up, suck in some oxygen. Torpedoes hitting that guy from all directions. Some of mine also hitting. Back down to periscope depth. Get the remaining torpedoes in the tubes away. Rasputin is almost gone. Bingo, got him. And that is this operation complete on hard difficulty with 5 stars. And that is pretty much what you can expect to be playing in the next patch for World of Warships. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Have yourselves a great weekend, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.